Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. A little snow down in Texas, a little freezing rain, a little cold. Actually, a lot more than a little. In fact, they're saying at least 14 people have been killed, millions of people without power. You've got a system that's, well, struggling. And what I find really kind of frightening is the responses that I'm seeing coming out of some of our Republican friends. And look, they're saying that this outage could last another day, maybe longer. The fact of the matter is that the providers don't have enough energy. And again, this is another one of those things where I got to start questioning, deregulating things. I got to go question the gambling, the markets, if you will, because a lot of this stuff is betting, and I gotta question. How much of the shortages and the outages have to do with these providers just going, we want more. They're saying that the providers simply don't have the megawatts needed to restore the power because evidently the gas is frozen. Evidently they claim that if you watch Fox News, it's all about the windmills. They claim that the windmills have frozen, and that's the reason, which is why we need to go back to good old-fashioned drill, baby, drill, and we need oil. Sad reality, these temperatures are still unusually cold for Texas, especially during this time of the year, and there's evidently more freezing rain coming. Now, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT they're called, evidently there was an emergency meeting on Monday where officials of the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission of Texas, introduced an order that would adjust prices. And their order said, and I read, quote, "Energy prices should reflect scarcity of the supply. If customer load is being shed, scarcity is at its maximum, and the market price for the energy needed to serve that load should also be at its highest." If I'm reading that right, that means as we need energy the most during these emergency moments, this is a great time to gouge. That's kind of what I'm reading. And it reminded me, a couple of years ago, we went to a baseball game out in Pittsburgh. And on Thursday we went, and the cheap seats were like $5 because they had something called dynamic pricing. And I always love good buzzwords and good catchphrases, but it was dynamic pricing. You're benefiting from dynamic pricing because nobody was going to the game, so you got the tickets for $5. You came back on Saturday a couple days later when there was more tickets. Not only doubled, not tripled, but quadrupled. They were $20 for virtually the exact same seat. I was a section over, but in the same nosebleed, nowhere out in center, out nowhere. Dynamic pricing. And this has kind of got me going in that direction where is this dynamic pricing? When we need the energy, we're going to skyrocket it. Because remember, what we were told is if we deregulate, and here in Pennsylvania, it's the same thing. If we deregulate and let the market decide and let all of these energy providers compete for your business by going for the lowest price, we would win. Well, the system seems to break in these moments of emergency. And you get these groups, and I don't know what's going on yet, but I gotta wonder how 4 million people are without energy right now, and prices are spiking because some of the investor stuff that I'm seeing, some of these providers, they're talking about going broke because they're spending huge amounts of money because they're having to get energy from other places because they didn't actually have it. Yeah, dynamic pricing. Now, I find it interesting that the Texas politicians who took great glee in what happened in California. In fact, I look at the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who I gotta hope is going to be looking into whatever shenanigans are going on once this emergency is over. But Ken Paxton tweeted out that California's politicians did this, not the heat, talking about California. And I would argue that if that holds true, that if California's blackouts were the responsibility of politicians, guess what this is during the cold? That's right, Ken Paxton. Ted Cruz, during the same part where California is under having problems. Ted Cruz tweeted out, California is now unable to perform even basic functions of civilization like having reliable electricity. Biden-Harris AOC want to make California's failed energy policies the standard nationwide. Hope you don't like air conditioning. I got to wonder what the tweet to Ted Cruz would be. I guess you like dying, freezing to death and having no heat. Now, no one takes joy in people suffering. I take no joy in the people of Texas suffering. I don't. It's horrible that at least 14 people have died and millions of people are struggling. I do find it interesting that, again, it's the Republican Party who brought us a lot of these schemes, along with corporate conservative Democrats who have always pointed that out. But this mayor of this little town somewhere in the middle of, I guess, the northwestern portion of Texas, Colorado, I guess is how they say it. I'm not quite getting the pronunciation right. Colorado City, Texas. It's the county seat of the county that they're in. Bustling town of 4,000 people. This mayor, or I guess he's now former mayor, this Tim Boyd, evidently, decided now would be a really good time to go on Facebook or on social media and attack people. Not be a great time to assert his manliness. So he writes, let me hurt some feelings while I have a minute. He goes, no one wants, no one owes you or your family anything, nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during trying times like this. Sink or swim, it's your choice. The city and county, along with power providers or any other service, owes you nothing, in capital letters. He says, I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. Here's the thing. If I'm paying my electric bill, I expect my electric to work. I expect that when I go and I flip that switch, light goes on. I expect when I turn the little thermostat up, it does what it's supposed to do. I don't think anyone's saying they want something for free, Mr. Boyd. But I get where you're going. Manly. Yes, you're Davy Crockett. But he says, I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. If you don't have electricity, you step up and come up with a game plan to keep yourself and your family warm. And millions of people are doing that. Now, unfortunately, they can't read your Facebook posts because they don't have electricity, and hopefully they're not. He goes on to say, if you have no water, you deal without, and you think outside the box to survive and supply water to your family. If you're sitting at home in the cold because you have no power and sitting there waiting for someone to come rescue you because you're lazy as a direct result of your raising, only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. Folks, God has given us the tools to support ourselves in times like this. Has he? And this is the kind of rhetoric that really bothers me. This hyper individualistic, this hyper conservative Republican. This bothers me. And look, I looked it up. He is a Republican, but I didn't need to look that up. I knew that because of this rhetoric. And he goes on with, just more blathering about how, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all this stuff. My problem, and the reason I bring this up, my problem is this is not the guy you want running your local government. This is not somebody who you want in the halls of power. We could spend time mocking his idiocy, and he has another post later that's just as bad. And, again, these are the people who are going to rail against socialism. Socialism's bad. Except this isn't socialism. This is you're paying for something that you were told when we took it from public hands and handed it over to private interests was going to actually work. So this isn't socialism. I don't know how you get to that point, but look, we were told when we privatized our utilities, we were going to get world-class service. And the sad reality is what we've seen for the last couple of decades is a crumbling infrastructure and a profitization of our utilities that is a problem. This is what we're witnessing is capitalism at its finest. It is really when it is the free market. Like I said, scarcity should be reflected in the price. This is the world that the capitalists have always wanted to get us to, a place where we go and say, you know what? Hey, if your lights are out, rub some sticks together, because we're going to provide it to people who can pay more for it, or we're just going to hold on to it and hoard it. My problem has been for a very long time is this mayor or former mayor, I guess now, is who the Republican Party has been for far too long. That when they fail, they blame others. And that when things are needed, they're nowhere to be found. I do give Greg Abbott credit. He did seek assistance. I give Ted Cruz credit. They did seek federal assistance, even though it's against their ideology and their sincerely held belief that Texas should secede from the Union. And their sincerely held belief that they don't need no stinking help from the federal government. They did ask for help to help the people of their state, and they should be commended for that. Good on them. But the sad thing is these are people who you don't want in the halls of power. You don't want the Tim Boyds of the world making decisions that are life and death for people. And this is what's been very frustrating me over the last 10, 20 years, as the Republican Party has time and time again showed us that they don't care about us. And every time they lose an election, I go back to, when Mitt Romney lost, we had the big autopsy, and they came out and they said, oh, what we got to do is we got to look for those working class voters. We got to talk to poor people. We got to talk to minorities. And guess what? It's what they're doing again. Same exact thing. They want to go after the Trump base, the white working class men that Trump grabbed. They want to hold on to them, but they also want to go after working class minorities. They want to reach that hand out to get. And how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to do it by talking about reforming Social Security. And protecting entitlements now. They're gonna change their tune. It's coming. I'm waiting for the language. They're gonna talk about job stability. They're gonna, of course, we're gonna crush those stinking unions because we can't have any of that. But we're gonna talk about job security. Even if they're crappy jobs, you'll have something. Mitt Romney today, and this is the part that just blows my mind. Mitt Romney, along with Tom Cotton, of all people, have said that they're going to introduce a bill to raise the minimum wage. I know, once you get up off the ground, having fallen over or fallen out of the chair, that the Republicans are actually talking about raising the minimum wage. Don't be too shocked. They're doing it while attacking undocumented workers. Romney tweeted out today, millions of Americans are struggling to make ends meet. I'm introducing a bill with Senator Tom Cotton with increase the minimum wage while ensuring businesses cannot hire illegal immigrants. We must protect American workers. He says Congress hasn't raised the minimum wage in more than a decade, leaving many Americans behind. Our proposal gradually raises the minimum wage without costing jobs, setting it to increase automatically with inflation, and requires employers to verify legal status of workers. Where have you been for the last decade to raise the minimum wage? And look, I've been saying this for a while. I'm going to be interested to see what they come out with. I know it's not going to be $15 an hour by 2025 because that's what the Democrats are throwing out there. But it will be an increase. It may even be like the increase that was proposed here in Pennsylvania, which was it $8.75 over 3 years? They were talking about, I think it was like 50 cents a year for 3 years. And that would have gone, well, we increased the minimum wage. And they couldn't even move that through the Republican legislature here. But that was their proposal. No tying it to inflation or anything. So I think that's a step forward. But get ready for the party of Trump and the party of the Tim Boyds of the world. The party of government can't do anything, shouldn't do anything, and here, let me show you how and why. Now, Bernie Sanders today, I guess, got a victory because the Congressional Budget Office has said that raising the minimum wage would have significant budgetary impact. In fact, much like the 2017 tax heist that Trump rammed through, there were two provisions in there that had, they used to claim opening up Anwar. Why it's in a tax bill, don't know, but they used it to get through budget reconciliation so they could ram it through. Sanders is saying, look, if they can drill in Anwar, we can raise the minimum wage. So this is an interesting argument. Going to be interesting to see where Joe Manchin and Christian, I don't know why I keep calling her Kelly, but Christian Simina end up on this, because they're the ones standing in the way of getting that $15 minimum wage over the next several years. Personally, I think it should happen. It's long overdue. I start thinking about, those people in Texas. You think about the low-income people that are living in Texas right now with the power shut off. The people that someone like Tim Boyd said, wow, you should just pull yourself up by their bootstraps. These people have been doing that. Working minimum wage jobs, trying to figure out how to survive, only to be mocked and degraded by people like Boyd and Cruz and Abbott and the rest of them. Imagine trying to live on a minimum wage salary and having to worry now about dynamic pricing, that your electric bill could skyrocket because, well, the market decided. Now, they claim there are caps in place and it only goes so high. But for most people, that so high is too high. We need to be reclaiming our public utilities. We need to be investing heavily in our public utilities. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about that and find out what's on the ground, what's going on the ground in Texas, as we have the president of the Texas AFL-CIO. Come on. Quick break. Right back.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2011. That was the day Madison public school teachers held a sick-out in opposition to Governor Scott Walker's anti-labor assaults. Walker had introduced Assembly Bill 11, later known as Act 10. This union-busting bill proposed the elimination of collective bargaining rights for public sector workers regarding health and pension benefits, limited wage increases, eliminated dues collection, and mandated annual union recertification. Immediately, tens of thousands of protesters descended on the state capitol, chanting, "Kill the bill," and took part in hearings to voice their opposition. Area schools remained closed for days as protests continued to grow throughout the spring. While parts of Act 10 have been ruled unconstitutional in the years since, the legislation has nonetheless wreaked havoc. A series in Milwaukee's Journal Sentinel titled Act 10 at 5 examined how public school teachers have fared since the Madison uprising. They found that 75% of school districts are losing teachers, retirements have surged, less are entering the profession, and most job hop to the highest salary offers. The teachers' unions report major losses. MTEA notes that membership is down 30%. WEAC reports that membership and dues collection were cut in half. Seniority rights have evaporated and layoffs are increasingly tied to performance. Annual salary growth has slowed, stopped, or reversed. Teacher morale is low in many districts. Teachers often complain of additional unpaid duties, larger class sizes, and more performance reviews. There are new restrictions restrictions on attire as well as speech and political activities. If there is any good news, it is that unions survive annual recertification and remaining members are more active and more engaged in union work.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I kind of got a kick out of, watching Fox, and what you see is, not the fact that you've got a failure of the system there. We need to be heavily investing in infrastructure in Texas, and maybe questioning what's going on in these markets and all of that. No. Evidently, it's this whole problem is because the windmills are frozen. And it's nice when you've got an ideological hatred of renewable energy. But from what I understand, the natural gas lines are frozen as well. So the fracking that they love so much, you gotta question it. But not going to hear that on Fox. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on what's going on on the ground there in Texas. I've asked Rick Levy to come talk with us. Rick is the president of the Texas AFL-CIO. Rick, thanks for taking time for me.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's from the frozen ground in Texas is where I'm from now. But it's cold here. I guess y'all deal with it all the time, but it's kind of different for us.
Yeah, I mean this is not usual for you guys, right?
No, it is not. Thank God. This is a tough situation for sure.
So is it safe to say that by having this happen, maybe there's some forgiveness for somebody that you weren't prepared? Are you willing to do that, or you go, no, this is something we should have been preparing for. This is something that we should have been able to withstand.
I have no forgiveness in my heart right now. It is our power has been out since 1:00 Sunday morning. And that's the situation for millions of people across Texas. And the thing that is so difficult to stomach today, as I finally just got on Twitter a little while ago. I don't have the internet and cell service is really spotty, so you're kind of isolated. As you start to see where Governor Abbott and some of the folks are starting to place the blame. And last night he was all about the power companies. Today he's all about ERCOT, who manages the grid. But look, Rick, back in the 1990s, when they deregulated the industry in Texas, the whole electric industry in Texas, the IBW, which is by far the biggest union represented in the power industry in Texas, and the AFL-CIO were over at the Capitol saying, look, you deregulate this market, you make it totally subject to short-term profit motive, this day is going to come. And whether it's next year, whether it's 2 years, or whether it's 2021, this was totally foreseeable, and it's the result of, I'll just put it real plain, it's the result of putting greed and corporate profits at the center of our energy system in Texas.
No, and the sad thing is...
That's what they said on Fox, too, right? Same thing?
No, they didn't say that at all.
Oh, they didn't say that?
No, it was windmills.
Okay.
It was frozen windmills.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let me just deal with that. That is bullshit. I don't know what I can say.
Thanks for that. We got it.
Okay, that is like, even according to ERCOT, which is the folks who manage this whole system, that is the least of the factors that led to this. What really led to this are, number one, that we don't have the ability to do planning to make sure that we have an adequate supply of power in this state because power generators are deregulated. So the state can't say, okay, you need to build a power plant here. You need to install this much capacity here, because the theory is that they will do it when the market sends the signal that that's the right thing to do. So it's a feature, not a bug of the system, that in this kind of situation we don't have the generation capacity necessary to meet the needs.
Right.
The second thing that it's happening is that we don't have the ability to tell power producers that they have to winterize their fleet. We have to rely on them to say it's going to be worth it for me to spend that money to winterize the fleet so that it can run in situations like this. But they make the ultimate judgment that they're not going to spend that money to do it because it's not profitable for them to do it, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we've basically turned over the whole system to short-term profit motives, and that's where we're at right now. So it doesn't, so what we see today is we see the gas plants have frozen and haven't been able to be brought online. The nuclear plant, one of the nuclear units is down because of the cold. We have, so to say that, a few windmills, yes, the wind power has been less than was anticipated, but that is the least of our problems right now.
Yeah, no, Pennsylvania is in the, kind of the same thing. They deregulated back in the 90s as well, and it was going to be this utopia. We were all going to get to choose our electric provider, and prices were going to go down, and it was going to be great. In fact, they used to run a commercial back. I remember back in 93, 94, where the guy would go to heaven, and he would want to choose something, and he'd go, "Where do you think you are, Pennsylvania?" And you go, it never worked out the way it was told. In fact, our prices have gone up, and our service is spotty as ever. But what we have done is we've broken the unions that used to service all those lines, and we have to truck people in to fix things when things go wrong. So for them, it worked well.
Yeah, no, it's that's what I'm saying. It's not a bug; it's a feature. It's foreseeable. It's what we said was going to happen, and unfortunately, we're reaping the whirlwinds of what they've sown. So it's tough.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm sure maybe you've seen, maybe you haven't. There's this I guess former mayor of Colorado City, Texas. Is that how you say it there? Because I looked it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
They had a very strange, kind of pronunciation that I didn't get, but evidently this little town, northwestern Texas, this former mayor, I guess now former mayor, basically saying, "Hey, suck it up. The government's not here to help you. There's nobody to help you. You're on your own. Too bad."
Gee, well, that's I don't think he'd want to say that to the millions of folks who are right now trying to figure out how they're going to stay warm tonight, because there's some pretty angry people. And talk about angry. The way this whole thing's coming from where I live, I'm huddled with my bride trying to stay warm, and I look out the window, and I can see downtown, and every skyscraper is lit up like it's New Year's Eve or something, and I'm like, how is it that you have so many people freezing and we still have enough electricity to light, to light these buildings up? And just the lack of any ability to really thoughtfully plan and direct our resources in this time is an outrage. And I think that, to have people like Governor Abbott and Congressman Dan Crenshaw point the finger at renewables or point the finger, first of all, that's ludicrous. But to point the finger at ERCOT, which is the agency that regulates this, hell, the governor appoints the people who regulate ERCOT. I mean, they've been in charge for the last 30 years. So whose fault is this? So I think we're seeing a lot of deflection, a lot of misdirection, a lot of scapegoating. But I think what we're going to find is that this lies right in the lap of the Republican politicians who brought us the system.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because your Attorney General, Ken Paxton, back, it looked
he's not my Attorney General. Hey, he's not my Attorney General.
Your state's Attorney General, Ken Paxton.
Thank you.
Back on September 6th of 2020, tweeted out that California's politicians did this, not the heat, when California was having rolling blackouts and stuff. So he blamed it on the politicians, not the heat. Is it fair to say that this is their fault?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of those tweets are starting to show back up. What do they say? There's always a tweet.
Yep.
So all the Republicans who piled on California back in the summer are now having their tweets thrown back at them. And look, it's just like, quit the games. People are in really dire straits right now. Let's address what the issue is and get it fixed. The problem is not renewable energy. The problem is allowing profit to reign in the energy industry in Texas. I mean, the fact that you tout yourself as the energy capital of the world, and you have millions of people without power in one event here in Texas. I mean, whose fault is that? Let's deal with it.
No, it's disgraceful. I mean, you expect this in a third world country, not in the wealthiest country in the history of civilization at its wealthiest moment. Now, you
exactly.
You point out where our priorities lie, because all the skyscrapers are lit up. They're, I'm sure, well heated. So the question that I come back to is, when do you start marching on those skyscrapers and occupying those heated skyscrapers?
Well, first it's got to warm up a little bit, because we're bad, but we're not going out in this stuff. No, I think right now, they've already started to schedule the hearings where they're going to do their dog and pony show. And look, we, along with other kind of people who can see this for what it is, it's up to us. You're absolutely right to raise hell, to show that there is a different path, to show that there is a different way, and to convince enough people to march along with us, because the status quo is not acceptable.
Now they're talking about, and there was a meeting, I guess, yesterday with ERCOT and the PUC there in Texas, where the quote that's come out of whatever order that they've decided to throw out is that there needs to be, how did they put it? Energy prices should reflect scarcity of supply. Well,
I mean, wait a minute. No, we're not using those kind of euphemisms. Okay, what they were wanting to do is suspend the limitations on energy companies being able to gouge consumers with skyrocketing prices as a condition of getting power back onto the market.
Right.
Again, it's not a bug. It is a feature that power companies make more money the scarcer the electricity is in relationship to demand. So what you had yesterday was ERCOT seeking to lift the ceiling on what these companies could charge to generate more electricity for people who were literally dying to have it. That's what was going on yesterday,
right.
And that's completely unacceptable.
And the reason I ask this, because I came to the exact same conclusion that this is a way to gouge people. My question becomes how much of this could be viewed as something that they've planned? I mean, we've got this moment. We're going to take advantage of it. Not the winter storm, not the winter storm, but that hey, there's a great opportunity to cash in here.
Look, there are algorithms upon algorithms where I'm sure things like this have been gamed out by the people who do that kind of thing. And in fact, I talked to a legislator today, and and what I said was, don't let the governor control this narrative with pointing the finger at ERCOT like that's not his responsibility anyway. Do a real investigation and find out, has there been that kind of gaming of the system going on? Has there been that kind of market manipulation? That's what the hearings need to find out, and find out why the state of Texas wasn't in a better position to keep that from happening.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Rick Levy. He's the president of the Texas AFL-CIO in Texas, where out of no power, basically sitting in the dark, I guess, right?
Oh, no. There's a fireplace.
Outstanding.
So,
you got to do that. But let me ask you this, because one of the things that I've been thinking is, can we use this as an opportunity to go back and relitigate the 1990s and all of the deregulation that happened, and regain control of our utilities, not just our electricity, but all of our utilities?
We have to, and I think that. Look, we're at this precipice right now where you have people like Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton, talking about trying to misdirect about, this is the fault of some wind turbines. This is the fault. You can already see it. I'm sure you saw it on Fox. The problem is too much renewable energy. That's not the case. It's too much profit, and we have to refocus people's attention on what's really going on. And that's, and what we have to, that's a number of things. Number one, it's definitely revisiting the whole issue of regulation. But number two, it's talking about an energy economy that works for everybody. It's talking about jobs in the renewable sector being union and good paying jobs. It's about building out the infrastructure in a way that both combats inequality but also builds out a reliable system of electricity. And we have to get our heads around the fact that planning and democracy and government have a role in that, and we can't just turn it over to utility company executives and think that it's all going to work out.
No, I'm right there with you. But I go back to this former mayor from Colorado City, Texas, who's basically saying, suck it up. Either you sink or swim, or either you live or die. Survival of the strongest. These are not the people we want in elected office.
No,
this is not a guy I want to be hoping is going to help in this moment of crisis.
No, I'm not wanting to be waiting for him to be walking through the front door to help. No, definitely not.
Now, Joe Biden, to his credit, immediately gave aid to Texas when requested. Immediately, did what the federal government is supposed to do. I got to be honest, that's refreshing to hear that the fact that Biden didn't win Texas, but he's still helping. I think
man. Yeah, I'm just so encouraged by what we see from him in this whole area. Just like, understanding the connection between jobs and energy and our planet in a way that lifts up working people has been so great. And the fact that he has been so there for the people of Texas, it's what he said. He said he's going to be the president for every state, not just the red states or the blue states. Very encouraged.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because part of what the Biden agenda is to address our infrastructure needs, and our energy grid has been a problem for decades. Something that's gone. We've been basically hoping something bad doesn't happen for a very long time, and then when it does, you got people who throw up their hands. Well, it happens. I hope Biden does move forward in our electric grid being part of that massive infrastructure investment that we need.
Absolutely, and infrastructure is so many things. It's roads, it's electricity, it's the services necessary to allow people to live their lives. It's healthcare, it's education. We have Julian Castro here in Texas has coined the term, the infrastructure of opportunity. What do people need from their government to be able to create their own ladder of success? And the energy grid is definitely right in the middle of that, but so are so many other things. And I'm really hopeful that when we finally do have Infrastructure Week, which I think we've been waiting for about 3 years and 47 weeks to actually have happen, that it's going to be a big, broad proposal that's going to put a lot of people to work doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, that is the hope. But we had a bunch of infrastructure weeks during the Trump years. I mean, we got to see him playing with trucks. We got to see him doing all kinds of things. But we didn't actually get any money to do it.
No, I know. That's kind of, I hear, it was, but every week we were going to have it, and then it just somehow never got to it. So. Whatever.
Sad stuff. But Rick, I appreciate you taking some time for us. You keep warm. You and your bride stay warm in front of the fire.
Thank you, my brother.
And I wish you the best.
And thank you for your voice, and thank you for your show. You do an awesome job, like shining the light on some places where it doesn't get shown too often. So thank you for your work, and thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it.
Anytime, Rick. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time. And I look at what I'm hoping comes out of this, and Rick hit on it perfectly. We need to reclaim our utilities, and not just the power grid, not just our electricity, but our internet, our phone, all of our communication. At some point, we've got to reclaim that and invest in it. To me, that's the important part. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1870. That was the day the powerful labor orator Leonora O'Reilly was born to an Irish immigrant garment worker in New York City. During her lifetime, Leonora left her special mark on the labor movement as a member of some of the leading organizations of working people of her day. At age 11, she went to work at a collar-making factory. By 16, she joined the Knights of Labor. Her activism as a feminist, suffragist, and trade union organizer led her to help form a chapter for women workers as part of the United Garment Workers of America. Leonora also helped to found the Women's Trade Union League chapter in New York. Although Leonora helped to found these women's organizations, she continued to push for men's unions to open up their doors to women members. She believed it would take men and women working together to improve labor conditions. Her skill as an orator put her in great demand. At the peak of her career as an organizer, she averaged one speech a day. After giving a speech to a large union of New York telegraphers, their newsletter declared, "There is no record anywhere of a more magnificent speech than the one delivered by Miss O'Reilly." Leonora was a founding member of the organization that eventually became the NAACP. She spoke frequently about women's suffrage. In 1912, she appeared before a joint Senate committee to testify about the need for women to gain access to the ballot box, where she lived up to her fiery reputation, declaring, "You cannot and will not make laws for us. We must make laws for ourselves. We working women need the ballot for self-protection." That is all there is to it. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, to follow up on what we were talking about with Rick Levy, the fact that we need massive infrastructure investment could create millions of good union jobs. But beyond that, actually making the stuff that goes into our infrastructure could create millions more. So out of this crisis could come a real great opportunity to reclaim our utilities, which we absolutely need to do, get it out of the hands of the profiteers, but also do what they've failed to do over the last 20, 30 years, and that's heavily invest and create the infrastructure that the 21st century demands. It's that simple. And to be honest, it's part of that is taking on China. I'm here to share some thoughts on how the Biden administration has done thus far in the first several days, and also what the direction is with regards to China. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come back and talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. AmericanManufacturing.org is their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's always great to be with you.
So, what do you make of this? Let's start with the stuff that's going on down in Texas. I mean, this is horrible in anywhere in the world, but especially in the wealthiest country in the history of civilization, to have basically a state paralyzed and be in the situation that we're in.
Yeah, I think it's the unique combination of how we have privatized so much of our public services so that profit-seeking becomes the motivation rather than perhaps resilience. The fact that we've underinvested as a country in having a modern energy grid that is resilient enough to withstand peak demands like this or other sorts of disruptions. And look, nothing is fail-safe. Weather happens, but we could certainly be better prepared for it. And I think it's primarily because of the dual forces of just unfettered deregulation and privatization, combined with underinvestment in what I would call our capital stock, our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, in this case, our energy grid, that we all take for granted when it's working particularly well, and then curse at when there's a challenge and we realize maybe we should have done something.
No, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I found most interesting from Rick Levy is he said, while he's huddled in front of a fire with no electricity with his wife, you can see downtown where all the lights are on the skyscrapers are on. Again, to me, that's just one of those things where you go, we know who's important and we know who's not.
Yeah. It is the haves and the have-nots, and I have lots of friends in Texas, and I've been checking in with them, and it's a very uncomfortable situation. So I hope and pray that they get through it very, very quickly. But it underscores this need to really examine our priorities and to have a energy system that is built on equitable service and resilience to the customer, and also a good reminder that we need to seriously invest in upgrading our energy grid and to ensure that we have a diverse and plentiful supply of renewable resources as well.
Yeah. Now, over the weekend, I think it was the New York Times that had an article on Biden wanting to transform our economy, and infrastructure investments were a huge part of this. Reclaiming manufacturing. So this is a perfect topic for this moment, because I would probably guess a lot of the things that we need at this moment to rebuild our infrastructure, we don't actually make here anymore.
Yeah, and I think that is the fundamental challenge, Rick, that we face as we look ahead, which is there will be this transformation. It's happening. I mean, technology, the will of the people. There's a lot of things that are coming into confluence to ensure that we're going to see dramatic change in the structure of our transportation, of our manufacturing, of our economy. And the question is, are we simply going to trade foreign oil for made in China solar panels or made in Korea electric vehicle batteries? Or are we going to be able to transform our manufacturing sector and create an electric vehicle manufacturing base from start to finish that includes the batteries, where we're way behind the rest of the world, unfortunately, as well as the traditional things that go into an automobile, along with a massive charging network that will allow us to experience the mobility that we're accustomed to right now. And I, for one, don't want to depend on Chinese companies for doing that. I just think that's a mistake. It is having companies that are controlled by the Chinese Communist Party play such an important role in the future of America, I think would be a big mistake from a jobs perspective, from a security perspective, and just from the fact that we welcome healthy competition, but when our private sector firms or when our workers are competing against another government, that is not a level playing field. That doesn't look like a level playing field. And I think that's something that Joe Biden realizes as well, is that you have to combine this new outlook, this domestic investment, along with a trade approach that is tough on China and more strategic, I think, in many ways than the approach that Donald Trump offered to us.
Yeah, but we keep hearing, I keep hearing the voices from the right, and people like Lauren Boebert going, the Democrats are owned by the Chinese. And yet I see this report from the American Prospector that reported that, Joe Biden has launched a Pentagon-level task force specifically on China. They also report that our National Security Council is working on China, in huge capacity. This tells me maybe that's not the frame that's right, and maybe Biden's on the right track. Yeah.
Well, look, as we look back over the decades, I think it's fair to say the national leaders of both parties got China wrong.
Yep.
I don't think there's any question about that. But the question isn't to relitigate the past; it's to look ahead and to see which approach is going to produce results that mean American jobs, that mean security, that mean a competition with China that is on level terms. And I think that Republicans also need to get their house in order on this. I mean, Donald Trump just today ripped into Mitch McConnell and cited, kind of his connection to China as one of the challenges that he had with McConnell. Donald Trump negotiated a terrible Phase 1 China deal in order to kind of salvage what was left of his China policy. And then there's other politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, who still look at China as being a huge business opportunity and who have a lot of blinders on. And so I welcome, I think, the very realist perspective, the strategic perspective that the Biden team is going to bring to this. And my hope is, and it sounds this way, that they intend to talk to our European allies about a common approach on China, some of our other Asian allies, North American allies, because I think we are stronger when we do this together. And Canadian firms, Canadian workers face this competition as well. And it is it's a threat to jobs everywhere. It's a threat to a rules-based system of trade and commerce and economic competition. And so I think that as I look ahead, one of the things I'm most looking forward to with respect to the Biden administration and policy development is how do they merge these domestic goals with the understanding that having the Chinese government deeply engaged in the American economy is probably not healthy for our jobs, not healthy for our national security.
No, I'm right there with you. And I'm look, at the very beginning, I was a little worried about Biden. I'll be honest. I was in favor of Trump's using tariffs. I wish he would have used them in a much more strategic manner. But the fact that Biden hasn't removed those tariffs yet, to me, should be a sign that that he's being somewhat serious on this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we are strongly urging at the Alliance for American Manufacturing, Joe Biden to keep the steel tariffs on, to keep the aluminum tariffs on, to keep the broad Section 301 China tariffs on until we see fundamental change. Because Trump didn't execute that. He used them to gain leverage, but then he didn't get much out of that at all. And so we need to get that next step, Rick. And we're not going to get to that next step by simply withdrawing those tariffs and hoping things achieve some sort of equilibrium. It would be very bad for some of our domestic industries, for some of our domestic workers, if that would be the case. And that's what we're telling the Biden administration, and we think he understands that as well. But we also have to tackle this mammoth problem, which is that China makes too much stuff. And it's built into their economic plan. They have 5-year plans. They execute them particularly well. And unfortunately, they export their employment and economic challenges to the rest of the world. And to the rest of the world, in places like America that have relatively open markets and not much of a safety net, that means a disaster for workers, which we have seen in many communities around our country. And that is something I do think that Joe Biden sees and understands in his conversations with working class Americans, white, black, brown, across our great nation. Right. And so we don't need necessarily that America First rhetoric, the jingoistic rhetoric, the blame China for everything approach that Trump had. But I do think that Biden understands with very clear eyes what the challenge that lies ahead, and that we have to have a very strategic and thoughtful and firm approach, one that won't resemble anything that Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or George Bush did, but something that is much more cohesive and results-oriented than what Trump attempted to do as well.
Yeah, well, I've been saying from the beginning, Biden's going to have to keep the coalition that he's got together, and you do that by making people's lives better. We need to make those investments and create those jobs, because jobs are going to solve a lot of problems. And that Trump base, while you could say, I have people who say, they're just a bunch of racists and misogynists and homophobes, and yeah, there are some. But the majority of those people were from small towns who felt abandoned. Their factories left, their towns crumbled. They've got all of the societal problems of opioid addiction and poverty that have made them an angry base. We need to figure out how, and this is where Biden's challenge is. And I even think the Republican Party's rhetoric is changing to where I actually saw them talking about not destroying Social Security, but actually protecting entitlements, which I said, wow, did they reread their 2012 autopsy report? But, even the Republicans see that, they got to keep that base. And I think Joe Biden can do that by bringing some of those factories back, by giving people hope and opportunity and real jobs.
Yeah, I think he can. It is a real competition. I do think that there are many Republican elected officials and strategists who understand the importance of working class politics and the working class to the fortunes of success for any political party as we look ahead. And Trump obviously tried to approach it by division and sowing seeds of doubt and of blame. And I think that there are some Republicans who are looking at this from a slightly different lens. But for me, one of the tests, Rick, is if you're for the working class, it means that you want to protect the right to organize. You want to raise the minimum wage. You do want to have a tough trade policy. You believe in public investment to support manufacturing, and you support a bigger safety net. Because if you combine those, you're going to have a much more stable, prosperous working class than you otherwise would. And so faking the funk and saying you're for the working class by just shifting trade policy a little bit, or saying, you want more semiconductors in the United States, while also saying, well, I don't want the right to organize, I don't want the minimum wage. I don't think that's going to be a very persuasive approach to working people, whether they're in rural, urban, or suburban communities across our country.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm sure you saw today that Mitt Romney, along with I think Tom Cotton, they've announced they're going to come out with a minimum wage bill because they want to increase the minimum wage. But we're gonna go after those illegals. So you had to get the politic in there. Can't just do something that's right. You got to throw something else in with it.
The strings attached, always, Rick. Always, yeah.
Do we see any possibility of an increase in minimum wage? I mean, I'm encouraged to find out that the CBO has said that raising the minimum wage will have more impact than drilling in Anwar did when they were able to ram that through in 2017. Do you see any increase in the minimum wage coming?
Yeah, look, I don't know about timing, but I have to imagine this is something that Congress and the administration can get done. And you look how wildly popular it is when it's put up for referenda in states, red,
Florida,
blue, otherwise. So I do think that this gets done. I think the question is, and I'm embarrassed to say this, I was working on Capitol Hill the last time we raised the minimum wage, and it was a deal between Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, and one of the prices for that was welfare reform, and so that's probably not a trade-off that we want to try to make here. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to get a minimum wage increase, and I say this as someone who works with companies and with unions. From a manufacturing perspective, I think a minimum wage increase is a very positive thing, because it means you're lifting more workers up out of poverty wages into middle class wages, and they're going to be able to buy durable goods and washing machines and automobiles, and they'll have more disposable income, and that has extraordinary benefits for the American economy.
No, I mean, to me, there's not a downside in giving people more disposable income, because I've read the studies like everybody else has. The more money folks at the bottom have, the more they spend, the more it generates economic activity, and the more small businesses, especially local small businesses, benefit. So for me, that's the good part of it. But Scott, I appreciate the time and the thoughts as always. Great stuff. I appreciate the work you guys do over there. The American Manufacturing, the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. We'll get links out. Scott, I appreciate the time.
Keep up the fight, Rick. Thank you.
Thanks so much, our good friend Scott Paul. Let's take a quick break. Your thoughts after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1883, marking the deadliest day in Illinois mining history at the time. 74 boys and men lost their lives digging for coal in the diamond mine disaster in Braidwood, Illinois. The Wilmington Coal and Manufacturing Company owned the mine. It was located in a marshy, low-lying area. At midday, the east side of the mine collapsed from the weight of the melting snow. The combination of melting snow and heavy rains flooded the mine. Those trapped below could not open the ventilation doors against the heavy weight of the water. 2 of those who lost their lives that day were just 13 years old. One miner, John Huber, recounted his experience. I rushed as fast as the nature of the passage would allow to where I thought my sons were at work, but found that they had gone. I then yelled at the top of my voice to the men near me and made as fast as I could for the air shaft, where I knew there was a ladder and I could get out. By this time, the water was up to my armpits, and I had a hard time to get up the shaft. When he finally escaped the mine, he learned his sons had not made it out. After the disaster, it took 7 steam pumps 38 days to remove enough water to attempt to rescue the bodies. Falling rocks and accumulation of gas made recovery work very dangerous. 46 of the dead were never recovered. In 1898, the United Mine Workers of America placed a memorial at the site. The diamond mine disaster was one tragic entry of many that plagued the mining industry. During the first 2 decades of the 20th century, mining claimed nearly 50,000 lives in the United States. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
We can't just settle for disinfecting the White House after 4 years of Trump. A fundamental structural rebuild is necessary, including in healthcare, immigration, environment, civil justice, labor law, and infrastructure. But here's another huge area that must become a priority for a major policy overhaul: the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Quick, name the Ag Secretaries under Carter, Clinton, and Obama, representing 20 years that Democratic presidents had control of ag and rural policies. Few Americans can name even one because, well, what did they do? Even as crisis after crisis ripped through the farmlands and communities they were supposed to serve. Consider Barack Obama's former appointee, who Biden has chosen to serve again, Tom Vilsack. Bizarre, since he actually tried to resign as Obama's secretary, complaining, "There are days when I literally have nothing to do." Seriously? At that time, whole towns were boarding up, massive hog factories were exploiting farmers and local residents, climate change was advancing relentlessly, and, well, get to work. Vilsack did eventually find something to do. He became chief Washington lobbyist for dairy exporting corporations, drawing $1 million annual paycheck. Meanwhile, hundreds of U.S. dairy farmers are going bankrupt today under low milk price policies he sanctioned. USDA, created in 1862 by Abe Lincoln to be what he called the People's Department, could again become a transformative force for the common good. But our recent presidents have used the position to keep the corporate giants of agribusiness content and in charge. Thus, USDA's top leadership has been indifferent and hostile to the majority of workaday rural people who need an ally. This is Jim Hightower saying, so let's become that ally. To help make USDA the People's Department again, go to rootsaction.org.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, I'm a little, I'm a little, just kind of stunned at the fact that the Republican Party is, basically eating the people who had the audacity to stand up against Donald Trump and the people who would attempt to overthrow our government. Day one, you had Bill Cassidy in Louisiana censured. There's talk of Susan Collins in Maine being censured. And right here in Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, who's going to be gone in a year and a half anyway. But the Republican Party here, true to form, they're going to show him. And my favorite quote came from Dave Ball. He's the chairman of the Washington County Republican Party, who said, "We did not send him there to vote his conscience. We did not send him there to do the right thing or whatever he said he was doing. We sent him there to represent us." Yeah, no doing the right thing. No conscience. Do what you're told. Yeah, I got to tell you, these are the people making education policy. Same folks. The scary, scary times. I'm here to share some thoughts on, education policy in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and whether we should be reopening schools and what we need to get there. I've asked Chris Lilienthal to come talk with us. Chris is the Assistant Director of Communications with the Pennsylvania State Education Association, PSEA. Chris, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks so much for having me, Rick.
So I look at this and I'm going, these are the people who are making our choices, making decisions. We don't want people to represent doing the right thing.
Let let me tell you, Rick, PSCA, we have 178,000 members. We have Republican members, we have Democratic members, we have independents, and I don't care who, what their party affiliation is. They would tell you straight up, we want our elected lawmakers to do the right thing. We want them to follow their conscience. We want them to, represent us certainly, but do the right thing too. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
Exactly.
If you're doing things right.
But you know what I want them to do right now? I want them to tackle our big problems. And right now, the biggest problem that we have is this virus, getting people vaccinated, getting us to the other side of this, reopening our schools when we can in a safe fashion. So let's talk about this. There's a lot of push right now, Chris, because you evil teachers unions, you don't want to open. You don't want my kids' school opened, especially those Chicago teachers. Tell me, how do we do that? How do we open them up?
Well, what's interesting, when you look across Pennsylvania at the 500 school districts, most of them are open to some degree. They're providing in-person instruction, either on a full-time or on a part-time, hybrid learning model approach. Our teachers have gone above and beyond this school year to make sure the kids continue on their track to academic success. No one will tell you it's been easy. No one will tell you it's been a smooth ride, because it hasn't. But we know that our teachers are doing everything that they possibly can to keep kids on the right track. The challenge right now is, how do we get more kids into the classroom for more time through the week? And the way that we need to accomplish that, we need to make sure that educators and support professionals have access to the COVID-19 vaccine. That's been a big advocacy push for PSCA in recent weeks.
I mean, the thing that gets me is I don't know why that hasn't happened already, other than, as people have told me, we just don't have enough of the vaccine yet. I know we were told during while Trump was still in office that there were all of these, they were stockpiling, we had millions of doses. Evidently, we don't. Do you have any idea of when we're going to have enough? And I know Dr. Fauci has said by April, we should have no problem. Why don't we have enough for our teachers, our healthcare providers, our transit workers? Why don't we have enough right now for them?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, the supply, the demand is outstripping the supply right now for the vaccine. And, what we've seen is, since the Biden administration has come in, we've seen some good developments there. Just recently, a deal was reached to secure the additional supplies of the vaccine that the entire nation's going to need through the summer. But we're still in this point right now where it's just too little, too slow, not coming fast enough. And, when we look at teachers and we look at frontline workers, we went out and looked at what other states are doing. Well, 25 states are making the vaccine available to some or all of their teachers right now. In some cases, it's limited by age, it's limited by health condition. That's not happening in Pennsylvania. So what we've been saying is, if it can happen in 26 other states, it can happen here in Pennsylvania. So PSCA teamed up with some other prominent education groups and sent a letter to Governor Wolf last week, urging him to explore some creative ways that we can get this done, because we really want to see our teachers, our support staff, we want them to be safe, but we also want to be moving in the direction of getting kids back in the classroom more times throughout the week.
Yeah, I got to tell you though, Chris, I'm of this mindset. I've got 2 kids in school. I'm of the mindset I'm in no hurry to rush them back to where things were, quote unquote, when they were normal, until we're to the other side of this. I have no problem with doing what we've been doing from now until the beginning of next year. That seems sane. It seems rational. And look, I know our kids' teachers have gone well above and beyond and have been extremely flexible, because there have been times where, in-person school didn't happen for a couple of weeks because you had an outbreak, and they reacted rightly so. And you had to be flexible. I give teachers the utmost credit for this. I'm in no hurry to race back in just because, hey, we've now got this thing that we've opened the doors. I'm in no hurry to race back in. We've gotten this far. We should see it through.
Yeah, the question I get a lot, Rick, people say, oh, well, once the teachers get the vaccine, everything goes back to normal, right? And I have to say, well, it's a step toward normal. But unfortunately, it's not the thing that changes everything. We still have to make sure that we're following all of the safety protocols, and that means a lot of the things that you're referring to, Rick. Things like wearing masks in school buildings, that has to continue throughout the school year and probably into next school year. We have to make sure that we're maintaining social distancing. One of the biggest concerns that we have right now is too many school districts are trying to loosen the social distancing rules. The scientific consensus on this is that we need to maintain 6 feet, right? Well, now there's school districts talking about 4 feet and 3 feet so that they can pack more kids into the classroom, pack more kids into the cafeteria. And that's not good for anybody. That's not going to be good for the kids, for their families back home. It's not going to be good for the staff and the teachers. So you're absolutely right. We do need to keep following these mitigation protocols, even after educators and support professionals have access to the vaccine.
No, well, I mean, you don't want all these kids coming together and then taking something home to grandma or grandpa or to their
Absolutely.
parents. I mean, I guess the basic understanding of how things spread, and then who the vulnerable parts are. I think that has to be. I would hope we'd be there by now. I mean, we've been doing this long enough, don't you think?
Yeah, you would hope. You certainly would hope, but it's tough. It's tough. Let me tell you, it's tough on our teachers because we have educators and we have parents out there who, much like yourself, Rick, really see how serious this is, and they really are very strict about the protocols and supportive of the teachers and supportive of what the schools are doing to keep everyone safe. And then unfortunately, you have some groups out there, some folks who are just fed up with the pandemic. We're all fed up with the pandemic, right? We'd all like to make it go away.
Absolutely.
But we can't pretend like it isn't serious. We can't pretend like it isn't a real thing out there, and just say, okay, we're going to send the kids back to school 5 days a week. We're going to pack the hallways, and it'll be fine. No, we can't think like that. We need to follow the science and follow the experts.
So what do we do? What's the marching order to get the governor? Because you're saying it's the governor's call on how we go about this. If I'm not mistaken, the governor has the ability to say, hey, we need to vaccinate our teachers now, right?
Yeah, so there is a statewide vaccination plan that's in place, and right now we're still in the first phase of that 1A, which includes healthcare and hospital workers, who obviously should be the first ones to have access to this vaccine, as well as older Pennsylvanians over 65 and those under 65 who have serious health conditions. What we're saying, what PSA is saying, is that let's look at how we can keep that process going, because that is really important. But as we're starting to see vaccine supplies ramp up, let's take a portion of that supply, set it aside, and say, this is for teachers, this is for educators and support staff, so that we can start getting this process going, and have that set aside. And over the course of a matter of weeks, we could actually start to see most, if not all, of our educators having access to the vaccine.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, it's my view that we should be using the schools to be vaccinating people. They've got large gymnasiums. We've got large hallways. We could be lining people up. I have a friend who went to get a shot, and he went to a supermarket to do it. They can only do 4 people an hour. So you go, what? Only 4 people an hour? Because that's all the room they had to keep them apart. And I'm going, we should be using stadiums and auditoriums everywhere, lining people up. If you can hold a pencil, you can hold a needle to jab somebody. We need to get shots in arms. I want to get to the other side of this.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, schools have a long history of opening up their auditoriums and their spaces for a variety of really important public good. Voting, community meetings, special events, fundraisers, and this is obviously a very important community need. So that's an idea that's definitely worth exploring. And we're hopeful that too. The governor had a press conference last week. Lawmakers are coming together to form a task force to look at the vaccine rollout. So we are hopeful. We know Governor Wolf very well. We worked with him. He cares about teachers. He cares about students. I know he wants to do the right thing. We just kind of got off to a rocky start, and we're hoping that we can kind of right the ship. And
yeah, we got a lot to do on this COVID front, and hopefully soon we get the the vaccine's out and folks get it. And I wish you guys the best. Chris, I appreciate the time, the thoughts. What's the marching order? Is there anything that I can do? Is there anything our listeners can do to help push this along?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can communicate with your elected House members, your elected state senators. Let them know that you think that it's important for educators to have access to this vaccine, so that we can move in the direction of making those schools that are open right now, make them safer spaces for everyone. So definitely reach out, call the governor's office, reach out to your lawmakers, let them know how you feel.
There you go. Good stuff as always. Chris, I appreciate you taking some time for us, keeping us up to date on what's going on in the classrooms. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Chris Lilienthal, Assistant Communications Director there with the Pennsylvania State Education Association, psea.org, their website, if you want more information. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2011. That was the day Madison public school teachers held a sick-out in opposition to Governor Scott Walker's anti-labor assaults. Walker had introduced Assembly Bill 11, later known as Act 10. This union-busting bill proposed the elimination of collective bargaining rights for public sector workers regarding health and pension benefits, limited wage increases, eliminated dues collection, and mandated annual union recertification. Immediately, tens of thousands of protesters descended on the state capitol, chanting "Kill the bill," and took part in hearings to voice their opposition. Area schools remained closed for days as protests continued to grow throughout the spring. While parts of Act 10 have been ruled unconstitutional in the years since, the legislation has nonetheless wreaked havoc. A series in Milwaukee's Journal Sentinel titled Act 10 at 5 examined how public school teachers have fared since the Madison uprising. They found that 75% of school districts are losing teachers, retirements have surged, less are entering the profession, and most job hop to the highest salary offers. The teachers' unions report major losses. MTEA notes that membership is down 30%. WEAC reports that membership and dues collection were cut in half. Seniority rights have evaporated and layoffs are increasingly tied to performance. Annual salary growth has slowed, stopped, or reversed. Teacher morale is low in many districts. Teachers often complain of additional unpaid duties, larger class sizes, and more performance reviews. There are new restrictions on attire as well as speech and political activities. If there is any good news, it is that unions survive annual recertification and remaining members are more active and more engaged in union work.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
To highlight something Chris said there, the fact is our teachers have done a phenomenal job, and I want to make sure I give a shout out to them for the work that they've done during all of this, because it's tough. It really is. I can't imagine the hours that they put in to try and make sure that kids get the information that they need, that they keep it interesting and they keep it, keep the kids engaged. I think again they've done a phenomenal job, and I wish everyone was as flexible as they have been in dealing with this horrible situation. So I just wanted to make sure that we get that out. And look, we should be vaccinating all of them, transit workers, all of our frontline essential workers, all of them. Those people we were calling frontline heroes, grocery store workers, they should be getting it too first. But I know we're in a Hunger Games scenario where everybody wants to be first. Scary times we are in. Interesting now that Donald Trump has reared his head. Evidently a blistering statement they're saying, quite lengthy. Evidently gave the statement through his Save America PAC. And I'm not going to go through all of it. He basically just went after Mitch McConnell and said that it's basically either him or them. Trump claims that the Democrats played him like a fiddle, and I'm like, really? Were we watching the same thing? But he gave what you expect from Trump, which is no one can exist without me. I'm still the greatest. Yeah, you're never going to win again if they support Trump, and I'm hoping they're right. I'm hoping that the Republican Party, as we see it today, ceases to exist. I'm hoping that they find some bit of sanity. I've been saying that for years. I hope that the autopsy that they took in 2012, that they actually start competing on ideas, and they stop being the party of that the mayor from Colorado City, Texas, who basically said, you're on your own, screw you, and if you complain about it, it's your fault. As I'm looking at this, I'm hoping the Republicans find something, because we need to get actual policy passed. The fact that Mitt Romney's coming out with a minimum wage bill, that's a great thing. That means maybe, possibly, we're going to get an increase. I doubt it's going to be $15 an hour. But an increase is an increase. And we need to take that and we need to run with it. I know. I'm waiting I'm going to get the emails. You're surrendering, you're all that stuff. Look, politics is the art of the possible. If Democrats are not going to be able to use budget reconciliation, which I wish they would, I wish they would figure out a way to get, Christian Simina and Joe Manchin and a handful of other centrist Democrats in line. I just don't think it's going to happen. So then you have to go, what's going to get you to 60 votes? Because clearly the Democrats are not going to do away with the filibuster, even though, again, I think they should. But that's a live by the sword, die by the sword scenario, because understand in a couple of years, Republicans could take over and completely go the total opposite direction. And there's nothing to say that they won't. And this is where my argument comes back to. We've got to make people's lives better now. We've got to do things this instance to move things forward. And as I've said, I like what Biden's done thus far. I like the fact that, today they came out and they said that they're going to be extending the moratoriums so people don't get booted out of their homes. I think that's a good thing. Now, it's only till the end of June, but that's going to give a little bit more time to get through this. They're saying, that 12% of homeowners, 12% of homeowners with mortgages have missed payments. That's a pretty sizable number. They're saying that this order is going to allow anyone with federally guaranteed mortgages to apply for a pause or a reduction in those payments until June 30th. And they will be exempt from foreclosure. They claim that this is going to cover something like 70% of existing mortgages because the government has a hand in guaranteeing 70% of our mortgages. It was set to expire on March 31st. It's going to go through the end of June. That's a step in the right direction. I do now want to see that rescue package pushed through. And look, by middle of March, I'm hoping it gets through. We get money into people's hands. We start rebuilding the economy. And, come April, when the vaccines start rolling out and we get more people vaccinated and we start, chugging along into summer to get the ball rolling, this is going to be hopefully a good thing. Unless you have Mitch McConnell and the Republicans who will try and torpedo it. And this is where I struggle because I want to believe they care. I want to believe that they're going to do the right thing and they're going to be decent people. I do. I want to believe that. I don't. And I'll tell you today, I was fixated on that mayor of Colorado City, Texas. I've been fixated on it all day long. Have you ever had something that's just that you're angry about all day? I was fixated on this. These are the people that are running our government. These are the people who have been elected into the Senate, into state legislatures across the country. These are the people who don't believe in government. I mean, imagine living in that town with a mayor who says, you know what? We're not doing anything for you. You do it yourself. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're on your own, buddy. Imagine living in that town. Imagine that, and I'm sure that's not what he said when he ran for office. I'm sure that was not on the campaign literature. I'm sure that wasn't the commercial. But that's his belief structure. And understand, the vast majority of Republicans believe that. And I said at the beginning, I didn't have to look up where his political affiliation is. I didn't have to do that because you knew. The fact that you look it up and you find out, yeah, it is what it is, that not surprising. So one of these weird kind of funny ways. But understand, I want the Republican Party to come back to somewhere near the same line. I want them to talk about how we're going to have policy to move us forward. The fact that Mitt Romney's thrown out a minimum wage bill is a great thing. We can debate it. We can talk about it. We can get people to move it. And we can get people who are struggling. We can get them an increase. And I know there are people who go, well, we're not getting $15. We're not doing anything. Nonsense. If you're not one of those people who are making $15 an hour or less, shut up. We need to get people an increase as fast as possible. We need to get money into their pockets. And then we can start fighting for the next round. Or better yet, we can fight to make sure that they get access to joining and forming unions so that they don't have to worry about a minimum wage, so that they can start demanding a fair share of the wealth that their labor creates. And when we come back, we're going to talk with a guy who's figured out a way to use technology to move us in a direction that hopefully, maybe this is the new wave of organizing. I don't know. But we're going to find out what his thoughts on this new idea is, and maybe how it's going to help us rebuild the working class of this country. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
A once-in-a-generation winter storm is hammering parts of the South, and it is affecting states that aren't equipped to handle the record low temperatures or the snow or the ice.
Historic storm cripples Texas, knocks out power to millions, brings record low temperatures to dozens of states. That said, U.S. winters aren't as cold as they used to be. Plus,
last night I was on the phone for 2 straight hours with Xi Jinping.
Biden warns China is outpacing the U.S. on infrastructure.
All of those warnings and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
If we don't get moving, they're going to eat our lunch.
Sounds delicious. What are we serving?
Crow.
This is your Green News Report. Well, okay, Desi Doyen, this winter storm is packing a wallop across, most of the United States.
Yes. As we go to air, more than 150 million Americans in 25 states are under winter storm warnings and advisories as a truly historic storm spreads heavy snow and significant ice from the southern plains of Texas all the way up to the northeast. The National Weather Service called the hazardous weather, quote, unprecedented and expansive. Texas is ground zero for this storm, record-breaking for the state in its scope and intensity. For the first time, all 254 counties in Texas are under winter storm advisories. It's an extremely serious situation for nearly 4 million customers who lost power amid the record cold temperatures on Monday as widespread ice and snow paralyzed the state.
Well, so much for global warming. I'm just putting my audition reel together for Fox News. I hear they're hiring.
The power outages and rolling blackouts are caused by complex factors, but in short, they were caused by a record high demand at the same time as the extreme cold knocked out power lines, froze natural gas pipelines, and some wind turbines not hardened for low temperatures, and caused natural gas and coal power plants to trip offline. The Texas grid operator was forced to prioritize natural gas supplies for heating and away from electricity generation. Overall, about a third of Texas capacity was knocked offline. That's about 15 Hoover Dams worth of power plant capacity. Grid failures in this storm show that the existing fossil fuel-based system cannot handle these conditions. It will take time for scientists to determine the influence of man-made climate change on this particular extreme storm, but it is in line with projections that global warming is making such storms even more intense and frequent.
So global warming is making everything colder.
No, global warming is making everything hotter and more extreme. A growing body of research has found that melting of sea ice in the Arctic is disrupting the jet stream that drives weather systems across the U.S., allowing ultra-cold Arctic air to blast all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Yet, on the same day that Texas froze, Miami, Florida, on Monday, hit a record heat index of 92.
Of course it did. And actually, around the entire globe, it's much warmer than normal. It's just freezing cold in those 25 U.S. states.
And new data from Climate Central shows cold winter temperatures are not as cold as they used to be. In the U.S., winter is the fastest warming season, and the coldest temperatures across the nation have trended upward over the past 50 years. In Dallas, for example, the lowest temperature reached every year has increased by nearly 8 degrees Fahrenheit since 1970. President Biden approved emergency declaration requests for federal disaster aid from Texas and other states, even though they didn't vote for him. Meteorologists in the insurance industry warned that this extreme weather event, once it's over, will likely cost the U.S. well over $1 billion, making this storm probably the first billion-dollar disaster of 2021.
Unfortunately, it probably won't be the last.
The power outages are spreading to other states in the path of the storm as well. These systems were simply not designed for 21st century climate extremes, and our aging infrastructure system simply can't handle it. Late last week, in a meeting with a bipartisan group of senators, President Biden warned of the critical need to invest in repairing and upgrading the aging U.S. electric grid and other infrastructure, not just for resilience, but also for economic competitiveness. He warned China is aggressively outpacing the United States on infrastructure building, investing more in clean energy deployment and high-speed rail than the United States.
If we don't get moving, they're going to eat our lunch. They have major new initiatives on rail, and they're investing billions of dollars in dealing with a whole range of issues that relate to transportation, the environment.
China, as usual, is playing the long game. The U.S., as usual, is playing catch-up. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. We are now celebrating our 12th anniversary of the Green News Report, and we thank you for your support at bradblog.com/donate. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said in the last segment, I'm happy to see Mitt Romney's come out with a minimum wage increase bill. I want to see what the numbers are. Devil always in the details. But right from the beginning, I was on the Fight for 15 bandwagon, and not just for the $15 an hour minimum wage increase, but also for the second part that always seems to get left out conveniently, and I don't know why, but the rallying call was always 15 in a union. The idea that you get to that minimum of 15, but then we go beyond that, that we actually earn the wages that our labor earn us. If we're creating a massive amount of wealth, we should want some of it. and we deserve some of it. So when I see people doing things that are going to make it easier for folks to organize, encourage people to organize, we got to get them here on the program. And we had a listener point out that there's a new app out there that is going to help do some of that. It's called Unit, and I've got the founder of Unit on the line here. His name is Jamie Earl White. Jamie, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi there, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So tell me, what is Unit? And again, the website is unitworkers.com if folks want to take a look at it. But what is Unit?
Unit fundamentally is a platform that helps you organize your workplace. So it's made for worker organizers. It's a combination of advice, so that's in articles and real human advisors, and software tools that make organizing using best practices easier, safer in the digital age, especially for, remote workplaces during COVID or workplaces that are using tech every day anyway.
So you're creating a space for people to come and find information and maybe find each other. Explain how it works.
So when we interviewed a lot of early stage worker organizers that were just getting started, one of the biggest hesitations was, do my coworkers feel the same way? How do I find out? What do people care about? And so the way we designed it right now is that you sign up. It walks you through some union eligibility questions, right? Because if you're a supervisor and you sign up, you're not going to be able to use the NLRB law to help you out there. After that questionnaire, though, you can invite your coworkers to take a survey and also gauge their interest in forming a union. And 90% of people that log on aren't going to know what a union is. That's just where we live in today in the United States. And so they can go and find more information. We have a lot of links to resources, and we're building a knowledge base of articles just around unionizing. What are unions and what are the laws surrounding them in the U.S.?
Yeah, I know, and that's an incredibly important function because, as I'm getting a little bit older, I'm realizing the generation behind me, they know nothing. My grandparents' generation, they were heavily unionized. In fact, 35% of the workforce in 1965 was unionized. So you literally couldn't cross the street without bumping into a union member. We're in a moment right now where in the private sector, you're just above 6%. So the chances of coming across somebody are getting slimmer and slimmer. And especially as there's more effort put in to telling us that unions are somehow bad and things that we needed in the old days. And yet you look at the inequality that we've got now, you've got the poverty we have now. I say we need unions more than ever.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's crazy. You said some of the stats, right? 6% private unionized, 60% of people when surveyed support unions. 90% of those people have no idea what a union is, right? Or how it works or how to form one or why they might want one in their workplace. And so I think there's this big gap where we actually do have a lot of people that maybe ideologically think well of the idea, but practically don't know how to translate that into organizing in their own workplace.
So I go to unitworkers.com. I put in my name. I go through my occupation. I go through all this stuff to answer the questions because I went through it and I pretended to be a supervisor and it said, no, you can't go here. Go back. So if I get to the end of this, where then do I go? I get all this information. If my other coworkers go into, do we get into a community? Is there a community that's built? Do we contact each other? How does it work from that next phase?
Yeah, so within the app, you and your coworkers that are supportive can sign election petition cards, auth cards right in the app, right? So first of all, we get some of that documentation handled. That's great to just start from the very start of the organizing process. But also then the app starts to introduce supporters, right? So that instead of having this kind of anonymous survey of, oh, hey, I have a few workplace organizers that are supportive here, we say, hey, here's you need to work together with these people, right? So we start scheduling meetings for them and start introducing them to each other in this union-friendly environment. The next step, right, if they're seeing some support in the workplace and getting some traction with the election petition cards, is we put them in touch with a union organizer, right? So we hire and employ full-time labor advisors that are experienced union organizers, and their whole goal is to help this workplace get to a place where it can file an election petition and win a union election within the workplace.
So this sounds fantastic, and I hope people will take a look at it. Again, unitworkers.com is the website. We'll get links out on our social media to make sure people have an opportunity to take a look at this. How did you come up with this? And do you have an organizing background?
Yeah, a tiny one. So I won't claim to be an expert here. We definitely lean on a bunch of advisors for the meat of organizing best practices, and a lot of that's been built over the years by the labor movement. Now I would never be able to take credit for any of that, right? But the way I got started in the labor movement was I moved from Texas to Boston for school, went to MIT, studied to be an engineer, always fascinated with technology. And at MIT, took some classes on economics, and I'd already gotten the feeling, just moving from a rural Texas town to Boston, this feeling of the effect that income inequality had on these different living environments. And so that got matched up to some theory and economics studying in university, but I didn't really get to see the labor movement in practice or organizing in practice until Occupy hit. So I was in grad school when Occupy hit. I was still in Boston, and the Occupy Boston movement was helping out with the SEIU organizing janitors at MIT and Harvard in Boston. And I lived for 4 years in a dorm, worked with and helped one of the janitors that worked in our dorm, still friends with them to this day. And so that really resonated with me, right? These people deserve way better than the institution was giving them. And so we organized students to help volunteer with these protests that were going on at the time. And I believe both university janitorial staffs had some wins out of that. But I was mainly focused on the MIT one, and that really instilled, the practical idea of the wins that you can have by organizing for worker power, right? These weren't folks that there was no app or anything like that, right? It was horribly inefficient in a lot of ways, right? We were phone banking, we were knocking on doors and things like that. But when you got there and had this protest and saw, the effect that it had on the community, these institutions had no choice but to pay these folks what they deserved. And a bit after that, I kept looking into this, and some articles were released by this think tank called the Century Foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with those folks. Yeah. They published a couple of articles on virtual labor organizing. And it was essentially aimed at how software tools could help organizers, be more effective, cover more ground. They drew analogies to political organizing, where technology has been used to great effect, right? And we took that as kind of a blueprint, and in 2019 got started working with worker organizers and some labor advisors on how do we turn this into a tool that can help an everyday person that Google searches, I want to form a union in my workplace.
No, it sounds a great idea, and it answers one of the questions for me. How do you get into some of these facilities? I look at these Amazon campuses, and I look at how massive and sprawling these places are, and they're all private property. There are no union organizers allowed to go hand out cards or anything like that. So they've insulated themselves. So this begins to answer that question of how do you get access to those people who, as you pointed out, 60% of them say that they would join a union tomorrow if they were given the opportunity. You're now giving them the opportunity. So in this, as I understand this unit program to work, you could get workers from all over the place, throwing their names and their place of employment in, and you're just coupling people up together. This sounds fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's been a blast to work on. It's still very early, right? We're not disclosing any numbers, but we have had cards accepted by the NLRB, so we know that the legal process and the paperwork that we're automatically generating, it does work and gets people to an election. But at the end of the day, right, we don't know yet. Rather, this will be able to scale to something that really works. And so we're always looking for advice and good ideas and feedback from the movement on that,
right?
And ways to make this work at a national scale.
I mean, back in the old days, if you wanted to get into a place like, like an Amazon place, you had to get people to get hired in there to go and try and organize from within. But back, I think in 2004, 2007, they made salting illegal. That you could be fired for salting. So now how do you get people in there to try and organize? This sounds like a good first step. The question that I keep coming back to though is privacy concerns. Because a lot of people are going to be kind of freaked out, going, because we're a skittish society right now. If you haven't figured it out, so many people are like, I'm just happy to have a job. I don't want to rock the boat. That kind of stuff. How do you deal with privacy concerns when you have a bunch of people from one place signing up? Who's to say that one of the guys isn't a supervisor just to spy on the people signing up?
Yeah, no, and we see this and we hear it because we had a recent workplace, for example, that their employer spent probably around $15,000 on an anti-union firm for a tiny unit, 15 people roughly, and then split them up into shifts to take these captive audience meetings, using COVID as an excuse for telling some of them to stay at home, and just seeing the fear that instilled in these folks was really a tragedy. But yeah, how do we ensure the privacy and security of people that use the Unit app? It's extremely important to us. The main way that we do that is by only showing information to people that have proved that they're supportive within the app. And so generally that's signing an auth card and inviting people, right? And that starts to create, even in an organic organizing environment, that starts to create the trust that brings together the organizing committee. And so through some workplace mapping tools where you're listing out your coworkers, right, and inviting them to the app, we can pinpoint who's most active and who's most involved. Now, there's always the chance, right, as in any organizing drive, that somebody comes in, takes a screenshot, prints it out, shows it to the boss, right? There's nothing anyone's ever going to be able to do about that. But by protecting all this information behind logins, we can see who's accessing it. So at least if a boss is going in there, signing up as a worker and spying on this, we have a good log of all of that we can take to the NLRB and say, look, this is spying, very clear evidence.
Yeah, ultimately what we do need, and while I love the idea of the app, and I think this is a great, as you've said, beginning and first step, we need major labor law reform in this country to go back to the original intent of the National Labor Relations Act that give people the right to join and form unions without the kind of harassment and intimidation that we're seeing going on in Alabama right now with Amazon. It's disgraceful that in this country, in the 21st century, we're allowing 19th century tactics to go on right in front of our faces, and we're incapable of stopping it. And this is why, again, I'm hoping the Biden administration moves on the PRO Act or something maybe hopefully even stronger so that we can use tools like yours to bring people around to organize.
Our whole team, big supporter of the PRO Act. So I'm right behind you.
So the movement as a whole, I mean, they've got to be supportive of this. And it's something that, to be honest, and I'm not degrading what you've done, something that I've been asking for about a decade now. Saying, how come we can't put this on this little thingy we carry around in our pocket all the place? I mean, good on you for doing it, but what the hell took so long?
I would say there's two things. So first of all, right, the labor movement as a whole, and we've interviewed a lot of people trying to get all the ideas that go into this and figure out which ideas are bad, right, and are going to lead down a path we don't want. We've found the movement to be cautiously optimistic, right? They want to see new tools, but they're also, just tech isn't the answer. At the end of the day, worker power is about the relationship between workers, right? No app is going to replace that. And so, the question we're trying to answer is, can you catalyze those relationships with the software? And so I would say cautious optimism. And then why hasn't it happened sooner? I think one of the things that we're experimenting with here, right, is actually a new economics of labor unionizing. So we are not a union. We are essentially an employee side labor advisor, right? So, you have the same class of things that are like union busters that a company hires, right? we're that for workers.
You're
right?
the anti-buster.
We're the anti-buster, and as such, that allows us to stay pretty independent. And so, to be honest, we don't know yet how we're going to make this sustainable in a way where we can, keep paying labor advisors, et cetera. Because I don't think, for example, I don't think donations are going to cut it here. But some ways we're thinking about that, and I think why this hasn't happened earlier is because we're really thinking about it as an independent entity, helping these folks get to the point where they're voting for certification, that we can then introduce them to affiliate or help them federate, for example. But either way, get them plugged into the larger labor network and use that as a way to keep funding the operation, either through national unions, federations, or through professional services that folks need, like union side lawyers, et cetera, right? And so that's one of the kind of background inventions here is how do you keep it up, and how do you make it where it can spread all over the U.S. And that's something we're thinking a lot about. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it hasn't been done, right, is that there hasn't been a good strategy for how to keep it sustainable. Because
I'm happy to see that it's done, because I keep telling people in my union that the future is all on this little thing we carry around with us, because I know my kids, you can't get their heads up from it. So that's how they look. My kids are in 3 different rooms in the same house, and they're texting each other. This is the future. And I know, as the labor movement gets a bad rap for being old, male, and stale. But looking at this as part of the future is probably not a bad thing. Again, the app is called Unit. You can check out their website at unitworkers.com. We'll get links out on how you can sign up for that and take advantage of it. Last question I've got for you on this. In looking at this, I guess give me the 30-second elevator pitch on why you think this is important.
I think this is important because, to be honest, I think you already summed it up. I think there's an entire new generation of workers who either work using technology or socialize using technology that need tools to plug into that to organize their coworkers. And that's a similar generation to one that doesn't know what a labor union is today, right? So if you can mate that education and those tools for organizing, I think you have a winning solution for early organizing in the United States. We can really form a lot of unions very quickly in workplaces that don't have them.
It's good stuff. Again, unitworkers.com, the website. We'll get links out. Jamie, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. I'd love to have you back down the road as this grows and hopefully changes the world.
Would love to be on and update you, Rick. Thanks.
Good stuff. Appreciate it, Jamie. Earl White. Again, the website, unitworkers.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1870. That was the day the powerful labor orator Leonora O'Reilly was born to an Irish immigrant garment worker in New York City. During her lifetime, Leonora left her special mark on the labor movement as a member of some of the leading organizations of working people of her day. At age 11, she went to work at a collar-making factory. By 16, she joined the Knights of Labor. Her activism as a feminist, suffragist, and trade union organizer led her to help form a chapter for women workers as part of the United Garment Workers of America. Leonora also helped to found the Women's Trade Union League chapter in New York. Although Leonora helped to found these women's organizations, she continued to push for men's unions to open up their doors to women members. She believed it would take men and women working together to improve labor conditions. Her skill as an orator put her in great demand. At the peak of her career as an organizer, she averaged one speech a day. After giving a speech to a large union of New York telegraphers, their newsletter declared, "There is no record anywhere of a more magnificent speech than the one delivered by Miss O'Reilly." Leonora was a founding member of the organization that eventually became the NAACP. She spoke frequently about women's suffrage. In 1912, she appeared before a joint Senate committee to testify about the need for women to gain access to the ballot box, where she lived up to her fiery reputation, declaring, "You cannot and will not make laws for us. We must make laws for ourselves. We working women need the ballot for self-protection. That is all there is to it." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this wasn't predictable or anything. Evidently, Trump is regaining support of Republicans after the impeachment. Gee, who didn't see that coming? Anyone? Considering that you've got the states where people, senators actually had the audacity to vote their conscience. You actually have the state parties looking to censure those senators who had the unmitigated gall to actually do what they thought was right. But Trump actually has a majority of Republican voters supporting him. 54%, they say. They support him running in 2024. So for all those people who are saying, "Oh, he's politically done, he's over," we're talking about Republicans after all. It is what it is. Now you could go, but Rick, he's not going to win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. He's not going to win those states again. Those states have learned their lessons. Look, if Joe Biden doesn't get the economy turned around, if we don't really do some transformational things to rebuild labor unions and strengthen the working class of this country, I don't put anything out of the realm of possibility. And I don't think Trump does either. I mean, this idea that he was just going to, put his tail between his legs and go away, probably not going to happen. Because here's the thing. I had a whole bunch of people go, no, they're going to go after him in Georgia. Georgia. Well, the Georgia legislature. Leave it to Republicans. The Georgia state legislature evidently is introducing a resolution that would change the state constitution to mandate statewide juries when prosecuting election fraud. Because if you remember, there was this Fannie Willis, who is the Fulton County District Attorney, a Democratic county, who is investigating Trump and the perfect phone call, the second perfect phone call. You now have the state going, well, you know what? We're going to take that from you. We're going to make this a statewide thing so that you don't have local autonomy. Just for Donald Trump. Yeah, trust me. For all the Mitch McConnell tap dancing, if Mitch McConnell really wanted Trump gone, and this is where I'm still struggling with, he did the right thing after the trial. If he really wanted to do the right thing, he would have voted to convict. And that would have sent the signal to the rest of the cowards in the Senate to go and vote to convict as well. Because I'm still stuck on this moment where if what we saw on January 6th is not enough to impeach somebody over, I don't know what is. And I know Lindsey Graham's, well, Kamala Harris, we're gonna impeach. I don't see how she doesn't get impeached. Because she let people out and they went to rallies. That's not the point here. And I know we love the diversion, The point in what Trump did was to try to stop the counting of the electoral votes. That's the cardinal sin. Yes, it was horrible that they broke windows. It was horrible that they defecated on the floor. It was horrible that they leaked on the desk. It was horrible they did all of those things. It was horrible. The worst part of it was that they were trying to stop the certification of the election that made Joe Biden president. That's the unforgivable part. A couple of broken windows, I've never cared about. The death of that police officer, we should all be furious about. The terror that they caused, absolutely. But the bigger part in all of this for me is that this was actually a coup attempt. It's what it was. And in this country, if you can't be impeached and convicted for that, I don't know what you're gonna get people for. I don't know where the bar is now, if there is one. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, as I said, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.